it's easy for non-women to shit on black women and say they his main fan base. I don't know why we got an issue with that. Like that's an easy and lazy position to take, right?
Yes.
Without considering the things that all of you have already mentioned. That so many black women when they get to a place to be honest about it, have been abused sexually in some way, right? And that plays a role in how they deal with, how they wrestle with, how they navigate sexual violence, how they navigate abusers, how they navigate predators. And that's not to say that some of them have not been as harmful, right? Like I know for a fact that the reason why I didn't reveal a lot of this to my own family is because some of my main antagonists would be black women in my family, right? But I also recognize the fact that I only know the black women in my family because I'm not connected to black men in my family. So I think so much of that plays a particular role in exactly how we're socialized and how we navigate these things and how we understand these things. And I think that was just too important of a piece of the conversation to leak out.
You are correct. And I think that the underlying thing with everything, and we know this, but the underlying thing with everything that everyone has said is that it's power.
Yes.
And the fact that people will try and act like you don't have power over your own body, and they will try and take it away from you, and they'll act like the power is theirs. And so I think the way that we can, like you said, hold people accountable, we have to start from that. I have the power over my body, and I'm the only one who should be able to wield it. Nobody else should be able to take that shit from me. You know what I mean? And I think that is the very point that we should start. And the reason why a lot of, like, maybe our older family members have no idea how to even come to terms with that or start talking about it is because so much of their power has been stripped from them. And then they try and, come into this new era with the limited knowledge and capabilities that they have. But, like, it has to start from that basis. Like, the power of the body belongs to that fucking person.
Yes.
And that's it.
So when we're talking about this, what does justice look like? Whew. I know that's a interesting question for some, because some of us are abolitionists, and some of us are not.
Yeah.
So, starting with you, Tasia, what does justice look like when we're talking about people like R.Kelly and R.Kelly himself?
It's hard for me because I do identify, yes, as an abolitionist. I am staunchly against dismantling the prison industrial complex. The police gotta go. Stop calling the police on black people, period. That's where I stand. But, a lot of that is rooted for me in the need for rehabilitation, education, especially with black folks, with marginalized folks. All the things that we just sat here and talked about, it has taken us 20 plus fucking years to get here, to know those words, to have those things, to think about it critically. People every day in our everyday lives don't think critically enough, and when we do think critically, we think critically in a harmful way, which is why we get, backlash like them girls was fast, and you remember when you was doing this, and yada, yada, yada. It is, I don't really have an answer to what we do with R. Kelly. It would be very easy for me to say, lock him up, just throw away the key, throw him underneath the jail. But putting a monster or an abuser or a violent person in a violent, monstrous, carceral environment among other people who have experienced the same things,
Does not work.
are we gonna put him back out on the street in a couple years or however long he has to serve around people and be worse off? Be at this point now he's poor again, he's vicious, he has nothing to lose, so he definitely is not going to learn from his experiences. So no, I don't think jail or prison is the way to go. I do think taking away his access, his platform, his power, his financial stability, going in there and saving those women, taking the ones that we know that are there out, forcing him, engaging him mentally and saying, like, this is what you did, this is why it's wrong. I hate having to think about survivors, especially being a survivor myself, like having to educate assailants, people who've done us wrong. But at the same time, like I was saying off camera, it's very difficult for me to process us healing, us serving justice, us getting past these if we, one, aren't dismantling cultures that keep it up, and two, not letting people know this is why what you did is fucked up. This is why you don't have a right to it. This is why a person's body belongs to themselves. All the points we just made have to be put out plainly to the R.Kellys in our lives at whatever level that may be before we can judge them as deemed to be thrown away, right? Just lock them up, throw away the key, forget they exist. Because how convenient would that be for us? R.Kelly did get indicted, or, you know, he's engaging with the criminal justice system as of today. A lot of folks are celebrating that. And if that's their line of thinking, you know, they have something to celebrate. But for me, I'm like, that doesn't erase 30 years of pain and suffering. That may keep him from doing that from somebody else on the outside. But that's also telling people in prison that they are human. Because you're going to put a person in prison with those issues to then prey upon somebody else because you R. Kelly, you think they're going to treat him like an everyday prisoner in jail? No, he's not. He's going to have the same power structure, if not exaggerated, because he's going to have all the perks. He's going to have all the money on his books. He's going to have a nice cell. He's going to have protections in there. So why throw him in there and have him harming criminals, non-humans, as society says him in the same way?
Absolutely.
That's why I don't feel like we should lock him up. But we definitely should start with healing, restoration, and education.
Okay, what about you, McCurley?
I always tell people that it's hard for me to describe what justice looks like when I've never seen it. And it's also hard being someone who believes that prisons should be abolished, but also being a sexual assault survivor. Because when I work with a lot of survivors, they want to see their perpetrators or their assailants in prison, which I can't take away from them, and I can't say no. So I just have to do what they would want me to do. But I also want us to get to a point where we're not focused on throwing R. Kelly in jail, and that we're more focused on the healing for these survivors.
Yes.
So, like, after this the documentary is over, now what's going to happen with these survivors? Like, are we just focused on protesting R. Kelly and getting him in jail, or are we focused on these women? Like, are we asking them, are they okay? Are we directing them to resources, or did we just throw them in front of the camera to tell their stories and just going to push them to the side? So for me, I think we should be focused on more of survivor healing rather than R. Kelly. But if we're going to talk about R. Kelly, I think him unlearning toxic behaviors and being dedicated to like being educated and being held accountable for his actions and being transparent with the community about what he has done and what he hasn't, and just kind of being invested in restorative justice almost. So that would be for me.
Okay. My boy Adrian.
This is a very difficult topic because I hear stories about fucking solitary confinement. I hear all that shit, and of course, locking people up. I think it's just we could have a whole conversation about that, but I don't know. I know my personality, and I know that I can be kind of like, bitch, I want the hammer of justice to come down on your head. Especially, you know what I mean? Especially if, you know, if I was a survivor or something like that, I don't see myself thinking as, I don't want to say intellectually, but as deeply about this shit. I just simply would want that just lock his ass out. I simply would. Like, I know that I would. But if we're talking about something more constructive, I think it would have had to start with culture change, because we have to identify the fact that this nigga's doing what the fuck he's doing, and we have to care about it. Number
Absolutely.
two, you know what I mean? And then number three, from the first fucking allegation, we'd have to get that nigga into rehabilitation and like completely reconstructing that nigga's mind. And I think if we're talking about justice, that's how it looks. But we talk about justice now in you know what I mean, 2019, and I don't have an answer. I will say that. I think it's more complicated, but I think if we're talking about like revamping this whole thing, I think it definitely should start from like changing culture, we identifying that this shit is going on, us fucking giving a shit about it, and reconstructing and rehabilitating from then, and not waiting 30 fucking, you know what I mean, years for that shit to happen.
What about you, Jordan? You thinking?
Yeah, I am thinking.
You're gonna go to Queen right now.
Yeah, because I'm not a political theorist, and when I hear words like justice, I hear them similarly to words like freedom, and similarly to words like what do these things mean? Like Ben Kayla said very explicitly. But I do see. I am a prison abolitionist. Period. So I want to put that first. I am a prison abolitionist. So the first thing I am thinking about is rehabilitation, recovery, education, and kind of the steps it's going to take R.Kelly to recover and to fix himself, but also centering the survivors. I'm always thinking like that we should go with what the survivors want, because whatever they feel like is justice for them or looks like justice for them is what needs to be materialized and actualized. Of course, from my end or on the theoretical lens that I'm looking at, I'm first thinking about, destabilizing these power dynamics. So I want him to have no money. Like that's my first thing. That's my first thing. That's it. And that will be that is on the process to recovery, because now you have no choice. You have no cushions. You have no economic bubble that's keeping you from coming face to face with the sheer and crude realities of what you've done and the consequence that is your situation at the moment. Yeah, you can't pay no one off. You can't forestall. You can't pay a lawyer. All these things. So that's on a more material level. I think we should be interested in the long road towards an idea of what we may call justice.
I think to that, just a quick extra point, like, that's right. And that point there is why not listening to his music, not buying concert tickets, not patting his fucking pockets it seems like the small little mundane or like the obvious next step for everybody. But that's the point that everybody wants to fucking argue over. But that's the point.
That is the point.
Every time you click R. Kelly and stream that shit, that's a penny for him. Yeah. And he don't need not another more penny to cushion his ass.
And even if it's not a penny, like again, I was talking to Orenike earlier, and she was like, even if it's not a penny, because let's say the argument is always, well, they only get, it's not that much money, the streaming, but you know it is a lot of money being paid and invited to festivals.
Yes.
And people who do and curate the artists that are going to festivals, you know what they're looking at? They're looking at people's streams.
Yes.
They're looking at how many people follow them on Facebook and Twitter. And if you are a part of the 100 million people that are streaming R. Kelly in a week, then he's more likely to be booked in Chicago. He's more likely to be booked in Atlanta. He's more likely to be booked in places that are prime petri dishes for sexual violence.
Yes.
So that's why stopping the streaming of R. Kelly is so important.
That's why muting him is
very important.
So I think that I cannot have a conversation about R. Kelly and the R. Kellys in our own lives in the same conversation, right? I think those are two different conversations.
Yeah.
I think I am a prison abolitionist, and I still believe that R. Kelly should not exist in this society. I don't think that believes that he should exist in prison, and I just changed my mind on that 2 minutes ago when Tasia said what she said about why you would place him into a prison cell with people where you're saying, okay, you're non-human. Because my initial response was, I am a prison abolitionist, and I still believe that in 2019 we're not going to abolish prisons, so lock him the fuck up. However, I recognize the fact that no, we will not be abolishing prison in 2019, but there are still people who are valuable human beings in prison, and therefore,
Centoya Brown.
Period. And therefore, he should not be able to exist in these same spaces as they are. And because we also recognize the fact that prisons are some of the highest populations where rape happens.
Right.
Period. And so when I say that he should be removed from society, I think that it looks like what has been named with make sure he doesn't have money in his pocket, making sure that he doesn't have the status and the social capital that he does. Because social capital plays a large role in who can and cannot be held accountable as well, right? Like, so make sure that he doesn't have the stature that he does, which goes back to Adrian's point of changing culture and conversation. That means caring about survivors enough to not give him the specific power that he has currently. But I don't care to spend that much more time talking about R. Kelly because I think that is all I can offer him. In terms of the R. Kellys of my own community, right? Like, I think about my own assailants, one of which is dead, and I think that is the universe creating its own justice. The other of which,
She's so tricky.
she is like that, and I love her like it. Another one who I don't
know her.
I don't know where he is. I don't know what his social media is. I don't know anything about him anymore, right? And still, I don't wish for him to exist in a cage because I don't believe that people or living beings are meant to exist in cages. And that's where my abolitionist politic extends itself to, right? Like, yes, I was harmed in this way. Yes, I was violated by these people. And still, I don't want for these folks to exist in a place that is not concerned with their humanity, that's not concerned with my humanity. Locking him up would not be for me, would be for the prison system.
Absolutely.
Locking him up would not be for me, would be for capitalism purpose.
Absolutely.
Right? Because that means that they get to make money off of my assailant, not that I get to heal.
Okay.
That means they get to make money off of my assailant, not that he gets to be rehabilitated.
Absolutely.
That means that they get to make money off of my assailant, not that we get to move forward in a society where we no longer have rape culture, right? Like, so when I say, I think a lot of people oftentimes talk about prison abolitionists as if we are people who fantasize about this utopia.
Talk
Oh
about
my
it.
God.
And the reality is that we are mindful of the fact that these people are absolutely trash human beings, right? I'm never going to say to anybody that their assailant is not a trash person.
Right.
That's not my truth. That's not their truth. That's not a truth I'm willing to present. What is the truth, however, is that prisons only exist because capitalism exists.
Absolutely.
What is the truth is that prisons only exist because slavery still exists.
Absolutely.
And so if we are committed to anti-slave movements, right? If we're committed to
Break this down.
if we're
Break
committed
shit-
to dismantling
breaking that
these
shit
structures,
down.
right? We're talking about how we don't like anti-blackness, right? We're talking about how we are against slavery, right? If that is the truth, then we have to be 100% against prisons.
Absolutely.
Because the only people that exist in prisons are slaves.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Period.
Period.
So because of that, I believe that folks can be rehabilitated. I think that, again, with R. Kelly is 30 plus years in the game. I don't know that rehabilitation is an option for him. What I do know is an option for him is that he no longer gets to participate in society. I know that much.
Right.
But for other folks who engage in sexual violence, I believe that rehabilitation is a possibility. And I know that, like, for one example, BYP 100, which is a national organization, did a public transformative restorative justice process with one of their members who had assaulted another member. And it was a public ongoing thing that happened for 2 years where one of the leaders in their structure, I think this was in Chicago, led a public and ongoing thing that was documented on Tumblr. Like, you can read all through it, all of what they did on Tumblr. And in the end of it, I remember his accuser said that there were days where she didn't feel like she could make it through because she didn't believe that her assailant should have the right to her patience and her energy, right? But by the end of it, by the end of their interaction, she recognized the good not in him, but in what a restorative justice can do for a society, right? What she recognizes the power in being able to restructure and redefine how we interact with one another as human beings. And I think that is the power in restorative justice. I think that is the power in prison abolition. So that is all to say that justice to me looks like rehabilitation. It looks like transformation. It looks like restoration. It looks like being focused more on the healing of survivors than it does on what happens to assailants. Because the reality is, even in a world where prisons exist, 90-something% of assailants are not in prison. They're walking the streets.
Yeah, that is accurate.
While folks who have been assaulted are sitting in prisons, right? That's our reality in a carceral society, in a carceral state. The reality is that these folks are not being held accountable. They don't know accountability. They are able to walk the streets. They're able to preach in our churches' pulpits. They're able to teach in our children's classrooms. They're able to cut the hair of our own selves or our family members in barbershops and salons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like those are the people who are walking the earth, who are walking our society, and are given space to be able to exist in that way. Whereas there are folks who are locked up behind bars who are being assaulted every day, who have been assaulted before they were locked up and got assaulted because of how they internalized their abuse and their trauma for like played out in a way that led to their incarceration. So yeah, that's what justice is to me, and I think that we have a responsibility to restructure how people view prison abolition. It should not be from the perspective of protecting the abuser. It should be from the perspective of protecting the survivors.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what prison abolition looks like to me.
Okay. So I am not on the train of the abolitionists.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm still developing some stuff, and I listen to these like points and stuff y'all made. I'm really taking a lot from you. Like, this is the most I've ever taken. Anytime else in literature. Like, I don't care. And I find myself sometimes getting like irritated. I'm just gonna be honest when people say, well, no prisons, no this, no that. And I just don't understand this world that we are on. Like, I just don't understand it. I'm really just tired. I think R.Kelly has had more than enough time to get his life together. And he continued to play. And I honestly think he needs to be in jail. I can't. Not at this point right now. I just think he needs to be under the jail, honestly. I'm not even sure if he should still be here on this planet, honestly. I'm being so.
That's a form of justice.
I'm just.
It is.
Listen.
Electric chair.
Period. Lock him up. Like, girl, I'm almost like motherfucker who was talking about Hillary Clinton. Like, lock him up. I'm really trying to get it, and I appreciate them, giving their points and stuff. It really made me think I'm probably gonna dream about it.
Not dream.
I don't want to. I really just don't want to evolve on that.
But that's the reality for a lot of Americans.
But I feel like it has to, because some of the points you made was just really challenging. Like, damn. Especially when you said we're gonna put him in with other folks,
And he gonna do the same shit
same
with
thing.
the power dynamics.
Being worse.
and girl, he might take over the damn system. Like, I just
He's a manipulator. He can
Yeah.
do that. People
And
do that in
sexual
prison.
abuse is
Absolutely.
hard. It's a
so he just needs to meet a tire or a car. I'm sorry, girl. So I'm just
Or Thanos.
like.
Listen, that's all you got.
I call it
Well,
mercy.
we might get fucked up
Like,
too.
no, for real.
I'm ready to go.
I'm being so serious because I'm just seeing these people, like I said, like talk about their experiences, and like watching this woman, like Geronda was on Twitter, and I'm not sure if that was her Twitter account. That was one of the survivors.
Dream said that it was her account.
She said that she was feeling like suicidal.
Yeah.
And like, because she's like, there's no point of me saying this. And she's already filmed the documentary. She's already done everything. But now she's seeing people's responses. And I'm just like, I could not. The worst thing for somebody to do is not to believe me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that shit bothers me so much. Like, and it makes me think about even just like, I'm telling my mom, like, bitch, I'm gay. Oh, no, you're not. So I can only imagine what she was going through, like doing all that. And I don't have any remorse for him. And that is something I'm working on with myself and getting it together. But at this point, literature.
I don't blame you.
I don't necessarily say that I blame you either. I think that was why I made the last point that I made, was that the prison abolitionist politic is not out of having remorse for the assailant. It's out of having understanding and sympathy for the accuser.
Yes.
For the survivor. Right?
Yes. And that point was made. We need to be, especially when Kayla said, we need to be focusing on the victims and the survivors, because that is very important.
Yeah.
And even when we having conversations, the perpetrator, whatever, gets more attention.
That is true.
Always.
Yes. So
And then-
while we're taking this coin, I think that coin needs to be allocated towards the people, the victims, the survivors,
Survivors, yeah.
and other stuff that
Yes.
helps others.
Reparation.
Well, first of all, we
Yes.
should also be clear that R. Kelly ain't really got no money.
That is true.
Because he didn't pay some of
He
the
paid all these.
He don't have a lot of money anymore. Like,
He
he
doesn't.
has talked publicly about being broke. I would be surprised if the IRS come.
That's why he's still doing
knocking on
tours
the
and
door.
stuff.
Right.
He's wrote so many songs.
He doesn't have any money anymore.
He
But
don't.
he signed all that shit over.
But that is what concerns me, to be honest, is that he doesn't have any money.
So now he
But-
needs his platform.
So now he needs his platform, but also he still has women in his possession.
Right.
He does.
What
That is
happens to
crazy.
these women when they can't afford to live in a home anymore? When they can't afford, he's already not feeding them anyway, but like when they have to go now from 3 days to rather 7 days without eating because he doesn't have food to
bothers
feed
me.
them, right?
That
Like
bothers me.
I think about that a lot, and I don't know what the solution to that is because obviously it's not putting more money in his pocket.
Mhm.
But how do we protect the women who are still in his possession, right?
Yeah.
That don't have the luxury of not like the survivors who worked on the documentary, on the docu-series. Dream was public about the fact that all of them have access to therapy. They all have access to different counselors and different things like that, which I think is really important. But what about the survivors who didn't make the documentary?
Right.
What about the survivors who don't have a celebrity assailant who they
Yes.
can't go public with about and don't
Yes.
have access to
Mhm.
money like that, right? And then the women who are in his possession still who are also losing money out of their pockets because the person who was holding them captive is losing money out of his.
Yeah. Jess, you was gonna say?
That point there that both of you guys just sat here and made is evident of the blessing and the curse of R.Kelly and people like R.Kelly being the example, right? We feel it's our duty as a society to bring these public, wealthy people who embody these societal stigmas and these societal like dominant bodies, right, forward to make them the example. If they can make it, so can you. If we throw them in the jail, you know, that was the thing with Bill Cosby, right?
Yes.
What the fuck? They locked up Bill Cosby?
His
Oh, they not
ass.
playing this more than a
This
hashtag.
Me Too
Damn.
movement, yeah, they
And
it's serious.
then now it's like, okay, so we locked up Bill Cosby. Why we can't lock up R. Kelly? Or, you know, we locking up the black men, but the white
Or Harvey
Me Too,
Weinstein.
yeah,
Oh, God.
and all them still going.
Yes.
It
He got
is
nothing
the
to be coming
blessing
out
and
to.
the curse that we have to deal with in a society that we live in now. That is, everybody's on display, everybody's plugged in, everybody has an opinion. We all have to weigh in, and we all, in a sense, get to be unofficial jurors. And so, us using this opportunity as a time to, like we all sat here and dreamed about in this room, restructuring society in a way that centers the survivors versus centering R. Kelly, that we mute R. Kelly, that we stop supporting him. All these things are the opportunity and the consequence of R. Kelly being the example. I feel like the way that this goes, whether we throw him away or we, you know, start a prison abolition at this point, this sets a precedent for how we do this work going forward. And I hate to put that responsibility on us, but as a society, like, we have to be thinking that way. Like, you being complicit now, you know, you saying we're going to be okay with R. Kelly is you normalizing everybody's R. Kelly. And us choosing to restore these survivors is us choosing to restore all survivors.
Okay.
So we have to think about it in this frame when a famous person, a person of power, is thrown up on the slate, whether it's for sexual assault or otherwise. You know, we have the opportunity to make the example, to set the bar, to shift the culture, to change the way we do things in this moment. And I don't think we can just passively go on after this point and just say, oh, well, that happened in 2019. Who remember the R. Kelly documentary?
Right.
Then what?
And I think that it's also important, and I don't want to go too deep into this because it's not necessarily what this conversation is about, but I think it's also important that when these celebrities come up, right, where we get to have a conversation, a mainstream conversation on sexual violence, that then incorporates prison abolition. I think we also have to really discuss having an anti-imperialist politic, right?
Yes.
Because R. Kellys are going abroad and are doing these exact same things to other children
And
in
leave the U.S. and fly
other.
to other countries to do it.
Absolutely, right?
Where their law says, okay, at least we have a law in the book that could say this nigga's wrong.
And they're doing it at like with the permission of the U.S. Right? They're existing in the military and they're existing in like other U.S. Backed and U.S. sponsored foreign aid and shit like that, like where they get to travel the globe, right, and engage in sexual violence and do so as the American that they are, right?
You see it a lot in like old army movies and stuff. Honestly, when I was watching The Watchmen on Netflix, there was a scene where this Yeah, it was a scene where one of the heroes or whatever you would call them had got this woman pregnant, and like, you know, she slapped her and everything, and I guess it does go to show you like what you're talking about, and I had to think about that too.
These are just interconnected. Is what I'm really getting at. It's like
It is a
if we are going to
broader
stand against predators and we're going to stand for survivors and we're going to be prison abolitionists, then we have to really be mindful about how these structures work together globally, all around the world, to disenfranchise people, to marginalize people, right, in a particular way. That are always black and brown folks, that are always women and girls, that are always queer folks, right? Like that are always disabled, that are always fat, like these different margins that people exist on that we have to incorporate in our own particular politic. If we are going to be saying like, hey, I'm against sexual violence. I always have to bring that point up because I think people in America will operate with pro-survivor, anti-predator politic and never extend that to anywhere else. They never extend it to prisons in America, but then they won't extend it to people outside of America, right?
Yeah.
And I just don't know how you can fight for it. You can't fight for black women and girls if you are not thinking of the black women and girls in prisons or the black women and girls across seas.
Yeah.
You can't fight for black gay boys and black queer folks and black femmes and black trans folks if you're not fighting for the gender diverse folks around the world and the folks that are sitting in prisons.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think that we have to be mindful about how all these things work together and how, again, prisons have some of the largest rape numbers in America, right? And, like, we know that black trans folks and black women are disproportionately arrested and incarcerated. And that's true for black men, too, right? Like, how the interworkings of all these systems and these, like, points of domination just work together, and we have to be mindful of how that works and how not all of us, of course, can be disciplined in each particular space, of course, but all of us have to have some sort of politic that allows us to make room for all these people who are also surviving the R.Kellys of their lives.
Saying that, let's address some of the things that we've seen on Twitter or social media. It's always Twitter for me.
Yeah.
Like, it's always. But what have you seen that you want to respond to? Like, call out, like, what was something like tweets or posts or something ignorant you like, that ain't it. I think mine was when people were saying, well, we're not going after the white man. Someone made a thread of all the documentaries, like all of the monetized shit.
I live for that petty.
Like, all of the shit.
I live for that time.
Like, and I don't, like, honestly, this is really, some folks might see this fucked up. I only care about black and brown folks. I don't give a.
My work statistics.
Y'all got y'all shit going on. Y'all got a whole system that y'all built. Use that shit to do what y'all got to do. Like, y'all use this shit. But you cannot say that you're questioning, like, like, I don't know if this is real, but then you putting Centoya Brown as your Facebook profile. I'm not getting it. I'm just not. Because she was a survivor.
Yeah, she was
sexual abuse.
And she had her own justice. Bitch.
That's it.
So that was mine when people were saying where the white folks are like, girl, the government really want to get out. They already been doing it anyway. I get tired of people saying the government's out to get black men like that when it comes to situations like calling out like somebody like that. I'm like, girl,
ABC Family.
Like, girl, that's the only time y'all want to talk about that. Like, girl, get out of here.
It's called freeform.
Girl. So what was it that you saw, Ben Kayla, if you saw anything on social media that you was just like, girl, this ain't it?
I wasn't really reading my tea on much because I'm not for people's hot takes on sexual assault.
Okay.
They have some regular issues.
I love it.
But I will say, I think people's conversation of why didn't they leave or why did they stay, I want people to understand and actually do research on how manipulation works, about Stockholm Syndrome, how protecting your abuser works, sympathizing with them, just not seeing them as the monster that everybody else sees, kind of just trying to paint them in a very positive light. So kind of just educating yourself on that before you make a comment about how a survivor responds to the trauma that they've experienced.
Let's say somebody wasn't in chains. They wasn't in chains.
No, what?
I've seen
Okay, but
Yeah,
slavery
like-
was also a choice to some people.
Yeah.
And moving right along.
There
So
was a lot of slaves in one
what did What did you see, Taylor, that was just like, girl, this ain't it?
I brought it up earlier when I was just floored at the number of people, especially in my age demographic, that normalized it by saying we all did this, right? We were all young and we were all doing this, and like, why them? Why they bring it up? So I don't believe it. But I will also say, and it's small to a lot of people, but the thing that shook me the most was the language used to talk about the survivors on TV. Like, I guess because we do throw around bitch this, hoe that, whatever, there were so many tweets that called them little girls, that them hoes was lying, that these bitches this, that these little sluts that, you know, they fast, they fast. We fixated on the fast piece, but like, you cannot call somebody that you deem proper as a woman or a man or whoever, however you know, check the boxes. You can't deem a proper person your brother or your sister, but then sit there and call these women who are recounting their stories of assault and abuse, hoes, bitches, sluts, you know, fast. It was just dehumanizing from the jump. There were people who didn't really even give it a time of day. They might have just read like the description on the on-demand guide and was just like, oh, they talking about R.Kelly, them hoes lying. They some little hoes. They want attention. And like, the moment that you open up your mouth to speak that way about them, it allows you to say something idiotic like, they lying, they need attention, they being paid, like they want to take the black man down. Because you aren't, from the jump, giving them the opportunity to be human. Period. You're giving them just bodies for consumption on TV, something for you to heckle on Twitter, and the fact that we have access to them via social media is the other thing that shook me after that, because it's like, now we're Googling them, now we're looking them up, now we're looking for any point of emphasis on their Instagram pages or whatever.
They pulled up her old video of her going live and talk. I was like,
yes, or just their everyday lives, right? Now we use anything in the way that they engage to depreciate the value of their humanity, and and you know, this is part of the culture, and that is why it's important for us to, you know, I'm not saying police the culture, but just be respectful, to be mindful. Those are human beings, and you do not have a point. You don't have the right, just because you can mention somebody or add somebody, to drag them in that way, because you want to be ignorant, because you want clicks, because you want retweets. These women are survivors. They are courageous, and whether you believe them or not, nobody gives a fuck whether you do or not. They got out there and they did that.
absolutely. There was some people. There was a Facebook post that went viral, and somebody said, "I know he didn't sleep with her," and it was Toronto Bird. I was like, "Are y'all watching this shit? Do y'all like?" That was me not realizing like.
I'm not even gonna.
The level of person.
I unfriended every person that shared that.
Yes.
Every person, no excuse. But did you see anything, Jordan?
I was like Kayla. Well, first, like, I'm used to intellectual emptiness on Twitter, online. So a lot of it, I was just like, oh, you're a fool. Oh, you're a fool.
No,
oh,
literally.
you're a fool. like, and the funny thing is, because I've curated my timeline and what most people would consider to be like a better way than most, so I wouldn't be privy to a whole bunch of violence. But people are really interesting in what they like, right? And they forget that their likes show up on my timeline.
I think liking sometimes is political a little bit.
Oh, it absolutely is. So, like, they might not tweet, you know, they don't believe the survivors, but they're tweeting a whole bunch of shit that is deprecating and demeaning and dehumanizing the survivors. And that shit, I was just like, oh, let me just go right to your page and unfollow. And just like that, I navigated it that way, but I didn't see.
But you didn't see one that was just like, man,
one thing that, I was like, no, I tried to stay the fuck away from
definitely
that.
Understandable. What about you, Adrian?
I did see a couple, but the one that stood out for me was people like, you talking about R. Kelly? Well, and this person made a video of them like getting it in and grooving to one of R. Kelly's songs.
That was his ex-wife Andrea, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't.
How you pronounce her name?
Yeah. It wasn't her, but it was someone else like dancing like, oh well, girl, y'all talking about R. Kelly? Well, I'm still.
Anyway, I'm still on the.
Yeah, I'm still right.
I saw that.
So what to me that is so disrespectful, just because a language like that encourages people like R. Kelly to continue to shit on black women, because they know that that's the attitude that you're gonna have. Is that, oh well, girl, I don't give a fuck about what you're saying about this, about this sexual assault type shit, I'm gonna keep grooving and doing what the fuck I need to do. And people, as I said, people like R. Kelly know that shit, and that emboldens them to continue to abuse women.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I was like, okay, girl, I'm staying the fuck away from you.
And now that I think about it, I think Geronda was the one that was outside the courthouse when he was
Yeah.
Yeah.
and he ended up getting in contact with her.
Wow.
I think that's how they met.
Yes,
like he
that
said, I
is.
remember you
She went
come
to the
standing
trial.
outside
She
room for me.
stand for him.
And then she,
That's craziness.
But two things that I saw that were not necessarily about R. Kelly, but like were in relation to the conversation. One of them being, I'm going to name the 2 points first, and then I'll explain why I had an issue with it. One of them being the way that a lot of black men and non-black women responded to Chance the Rapper's words.
Ooh, shit.
And the other one being the black men who asked the notorious question, y'all ready to talk about black male victims, and how people responded to that.
Girl.
So
that was okay.
That springs
Yeah,
so
there.
girl.
the issue that I had with how black men were responding and non-black women were responding to Chance's words was, I think that some of us get so wrapped up in our current positions that we forget that just a few years ago we didn't hold these same politics, right? And I took issue with the white women that I saw and the non-black and the black men that I saw talking about, nigga, fuck you. Why would you have this position? Blah 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 blah. Like,
Girl.
first of all, bitch, you didn't even like black women just 3 years ago.
Hello?
You didn't start organizing until Ferguson happened. That was in 2014.
Around a black man.
So let's be very clear that you too were not protecting black women. Like
Is that a new movement?
that you too. That's a movement. Hashtag you too.
Hashtag.
Like it bothered me to see so many people. Who, of course, black women could respond in the way that they felt because that wasn't. Chance's words were offensive.
Absolutely.
So being offended as a black woman is just, and I would never say that it isn't. However, for people who exist outside of that identity, for you to respond with such a lack of grace and to come from a place of superiority, I was looking at that like, who the fuck are you? First of all, like, and I think, how dare we respond to a person that way when we ask all the time for black men in particular to be accountable to their actions and their thoughts and their words. When we ask them to be honest about their feelings and their emotions, and for a chance to sit there and so honestly say, to be quite frank, I didn't necessarily believe these women because they were black women, and I'm honest about that. And also then talk about how much he cared for black women, how much he's learned since then, and why he didn't denounce folks or denounce R. Kelly in that way before. Like, I get it, I hear, I understand. I just think that we have to get away from this superiority complex, and we have to get away from this idea that people cannot be evolving and changing and grow, and that we cannot make space for people's politics to develop. I don't like Chance, to be very clear. I think Chance has been trash in the past, and I think Chance has a lot of things to work on himself. But I don't think that in that particular instance that
Mr. Good Two Shoes.
right. I don't think that that particular instance warranted the response that it got from people who were not black women. That was that on that. I took issue with people.
And this is not to cut you off. This is the response to the video. I want to make sure everybody is on the same page. This is the response to the video that Chance, like the interview he did
with Jamila Lemieux.
Okay, because at first when the article came out, the article was
shit.
it was trash.
Rolling Stone put the video out, and all they had was one sentence from his entire video. When Jamila pushed back,
Come on, clickbait.
Right. When Jamila pushed back and said this is terribly out of context, they didn't transcribe the entire thing.
They did start coming for Jamila.
They did, and she didn't deserve it. And she apologized the next day. She didn't apologize for her words. She apologized that
The
she
intellectuals were
that she made
fighting.
him harm.
I was looking
the
for
girls were fighting.
The girls were fighting. They was like y'all favorites, and I think some of them wait for y'all who are like known to have these conversations. Stuff. They wait for y'all to like make any type of mistake, and they
No, they absolutely do.
And I'm
They
like,
do.
You so woke. You was
absolutely.
Where are your words?
Yeah,
and I was just like, I'm not taking Jamila. Her credit is good with me. She in the 700s. Like, not saying she can't. She ain't in the 850s, but her credit is good. Like,
Send me.
like she don't need no cosigner.
No, but
But I trusted her that what she was saying. I said, let me see, because Jamila interviewed this person. Let's see what she had to say, and then the
Absolutely.
video came out.
No, yeah. And I mean, folks, it's not a secret. Like, I'm in conversation with Jamila offline. So, like, I was, like, talking with her, like, girl,
But you don't mind adding the person anyway. He is blocked by our favorite Mayor Keisha Lance.
I sure am. I don't mind adding anybody. And if I disagree
He's
with
added
somebody,
me a couple times.
if I disagree with somebody, I'm going to tell you. Now, if we are closer, I'll be like, girl, let's talk offline because you know this ain't it.
Right.
But for real, I feel like
That's what we all need to do.
people online really like, these bitches motherfuckers support me. These bitches paying my motherfucking downfall, bitch. Like, that's who they are. Like, they are paying on that motherfucking downfall. And that's all.
That's real. Like you.
That's where they are.
There is power in a screenshot.
I was seeing what was happening with Jamila and was like, she didn't deserve what she was dealing with because so many people, the internet is performing in this way because they try to attack me too. But I thank God for the mute this conversation button on Twitter. I tweeted it was like half of y'all wasn't organized until 2014, so shut the fuck up.
Okay.
And somehow that read as black women. I don't. If I meant black women, I would have said black women. I don't know how I would say black women didn't care about black women until 2014. How did that translate to you? But people took that as me talking about black women. I was like, girl, that's not it. So I think people just really, a lot of times online, like, they read into what we say
That shit is funny.
to fit exactly what they wanted to say. And it's like, girl, it's not. But anyway.
Because it was a mess. I was like, I'm not gonna lie. When the intellectuals do be fighting, I sit there. I'm like, girl.
It's a lot of words.
It was.
It is a lot of work.
I don't read.
And I think that was the only thing, because there were a lot of subtweets. And I don't know.
At who?
Not necessarily you, but
Oh,
it was.
because I'm about to say, girl, I don't catch subtweets. They don't hit me.
Right.
I don't
Here.
have the age.
It was a lot. So
No, but I took issue with that, and that wasn't. I think people were focused way too much on Chance's words and not enough on what happened. We just watched a 6-hour docu-series about R.Kelly. Talk about that.
Yeah.
But then I took issue with black men who were like, they ask the same question every single time. Y'all ready to talk about black male victims?
this voice.
That's how bad they sound. Y'all ready
That's
to talk
how
about black male
Serena,
victims?
Nasheed, or whatever the fuck
Nasheed and
his name
Umar Johnson, that's how they
sounds.
sound. Like,
Oh my
It was a
God.
lot of queer black men.
And they only bring.
they weren't queer, they were gay. Let's be very clear.
They only
Let's
bring
be
that
very
shit up.
clear. They were cis homo.
They were cis homo.
Black men.
They were not no cis queer. They weren't queer. They didn't have a
There was
developed
no
politics.
fluidity.
They only bring
No.
that shit up when it's time for a woman to speak.
Always.
About
Always.
their
Always.
They only do that shit.
And that's,
And I took
And no
issue
one's
with that.
stopping you from doing a documentary.
No, but first of all,
There
I've
was-
written 3 pieces already about my experience as a person that socialized as a fat black boy, and my experience with.
and
with
I haven't
violence.
seen it on Black Gay Twitter retweeted often, and I'm on there.
Right.
Right.
That's another conversation.
So like,
Yeah,
so people are having a conversation, and it annoyed me just from a person who is big on English. Like, why are you asking this question instead of leading the conversation?
Right.
Are we ready, girl? Sure, lead, engage,
Yes.
lead us. Like, why are you asking the question? You can just talk. Like,
Silence
it's
is
obviously meant to silence women because you wouldn't be asking the question. You could just say, "Hey, when I was younger, I was also assaulted,
Absolutely.
and here's my story."
Hey, next tweet.
Like I did, like girl thread.
That's
It's
it.
I don't-
meant for a retweet, which
It
is the
is.
problem.
It's meant to
And
to,
the
to retweet.
byproduct of your retweets is silencing the people
Yep.
who
Right.
are centered.
Exactly.
And
But I
that is how
also-
Twitter goes.
Absolutely, but I also took issue with it because people use that in conversation with this conversation around Ed Buck and the second black gay man to be murdered in his possession. If you don't know who Ed Buck is, he is a wealthy white man who donates to the
It's on
Democrat Party.
KingReach.com. Check out.
Ashe. And people, I was so angry this morning, and I threaded about it. Like, so many people were talking about that story and saying,
They've been talking about it.
y'all cishet men, y'all want to talk about the black male victims. Here's your opportunity. I don't know how you look at a headline that reads, "Wealthy white donor, second gay man found in the possession of wealthy white donor dead." Like, I don't know how you read that, and you get from that, I'm going to dunk on cishet black men. We know cishet black men are misogynistic. We know that cishet black men don't like gay folks. Those things are we know that.
Yeah.
We don't have to use a story that is about the second gay black man to be publicized, being murdered in this man's possession, when we could be focused on the actual story at hand. And that shit pissed me off. And I'm talking about it in conversation with R.Kelly because people were using that because they were so frustrated with how black men were trying to silence them during the docu-series, and I get that. But what kind of productivity comes out of that conversation when we're not centering the person who was most harmed? When we're not centering the people who are most harmed? Like, there's nothing productive that comes from that when you say, well, you try to silence me, so I'm going to silence you. How does that work? Because you're not silencing cis-het black men in that case because they weren't the ones affected. They don't give a fuck about us being assaulted. They don't give a fuck about us being violated and experiencing violence. So what you're doing is you're trying to nag at cis-het black men, but they don't give a fuck about what you're saying or about the story. And now you've drowned out the second person's story in their name because you're trying to have a little intellectual battle online with men who don't give a fuck about what you're saying. How does that work?
It does.
So those are two things that piss me off about that.
So with that being said, fuck R. Kelly, mute R. Kelly, all of that above. None of his songs are in my phone at all.
They never work anyway. I don't understand.
It's just not it.
People were like, "Are y'all got him in y'all playlist?" No.
And I don't follow him on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like, not even my King of Reed's account follow him to see updates.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
I
So
also unfollow everybody that followed him.
Right.
Please.
yeah. So unless you like a person that's writing or documenting that's the only reason I can see you following him. Maybe like April Ryan follows him. I can understand she's a reporter. She writes. I can understand like her reason for. She probably got notifications on in case you tweet something stupid. But with that being said, like do your research. Make sure you're respecting and protecting our black women and not silencing them. I enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate you all being here. Make sure you're following all these people on their social media accounts. If you got a coin, send them. They out here doing the work.
Yes.
Okay,
I'm poor. Help me.
Listen, like they out here doing, they literally out here doing the work. So shout out to all of you all, and we'll see you all next time on the next episode.